Hi everyone, I'm the community engagement assistant at 10K, and I'm glad that so many of you have expressed interest in this webinar. And with us being in our Jubilee year, I was reflecting on the fact that so many of you have been in the corporate world for so long, and I was thinking of ways of how we could support you after your internship via the 10KBI or the 10K AI program, especially in today's job market. And with that brainstorm came the community engagement team trialing how we can offer targeted post-internship support. So firstly, I just wanted to thank Alice from Kokoon for giving her time to host this session and to all of you for engaging. And as these two sessions that we'll be hosting are trial sessions, we are open to feedback and understanding more about what your needs are in this ever-changing job market. But with that being said, given our time, I'll hand over to Alice.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And hello everyone. Really happy to be doing this. This is great topic. I love that I have the opportunity. So thank you so much, Yana, for having me, trusting me with this important topic. So you would have seen, hopefully you can all see my screen, and you'd have seen the topic for today obviously is building resilience. We're going to talk about the growth mindset, especially in today's job market. But I kind of want to say in today's world just generally, because I don't know about you, but I found the news very anxiety driven at the moment. So hopefully it's about building resilience in all aspects of life, but we'll talk especially about the workplace. Before we get started, it would be super helpful if you could say hi in the chat and tell me just a little bit about who you are. I've put a few things here, but you can say your name, although I can see all the names. So, but are you in a role or not at the moment? If you are, you can say what role it is. And then if you're willing to share a challenge or one thing that you're facing at the moment, that would be really great. Because the point of this session, I have a few slides to share, but it's really to make it as, live and togetherness as possible, so I can use whatever you're going through and use life cases. I'll be asking you a few questions as we go, so make sure you're next to your keyboard. I see a few of you are typing, so I'll give you a few seconds to type so I can see who is there. I will introduce myself as well in a sec, but I'll do the same exercise as well. So my name is Alice, obviously. I am in a role. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kokoon, which I'll tell you about in a second. And the main challenge I'm facing a lot of challenges, so that's a big one. But we're thinking about making our first hire in the next 2 months, so that's really on my mind at the moment. That's a challenge, and I'm also going through fundraising, so managing investor calls, building that resilience is definitely something that I'm facing. Big challenge. Keeping that energy up. Okay, I see some of you are still typing, so I'll let you do this while I keep going. Oh, amazing. Uh, okay, you're looking for a role, challenging getting an interview, opportunities, community engagement, finding innovative ways to engage with our community. Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, I see a few of you are still typing, so I'll let you do that. In the meantime, I'll keep on the intros. So as I've said, so I'm the co-founder of Kokoon. To give you a little bit of background around my career journey, so I started as an intern. I was an intern in a two-person startup, which was basically the founder and me. Essentially, I think I was the second person. I was technically another one, but it was very much just her and me kind of hashing things out and doing as much as we could, which was very stressful, very unknown, very random. So that was a lot. Previously to that, I was an intern at the Walt Disney Company, which was obviously very different. I think the 10K Foundation have maybe links of Walt Disney, because I know I've seen some of the Walt Disney interns sign up to our wait list. So that was a very different environment. A lot more plush toys than any other office space. And then after that, I graduated from a business school where I have a degree in management and entrepreneurship. And I went on to work at WeWork before the crash, when it was fun and amazing. And I got to do a bunch of different things, including leading our social impact teams, and kind of thinking about helping entrepreneurs and young people in the workforce, which is pretty fun and kind of gave me the taste to what we're building now. And after that, I worked at Amazon, so close to 3 years for both. On a bunch of different initiatives, but also around kind of helping small businesses. So I've always been in the learning, helping others space. And I'm telling you all of this because now I've co-founded Kokoon, and the whole point of Kokoon is to help early careers. So people just like you that might be in their first role, might have just done an internship, might just be about to start their first internship, because I'm sure you've experienced this, but it's a very different world when you go from education to employment. And so we just want to help, people like you, the next generation of leaders, to navigate that and be able to feel more supported, feel more confident, but also feel that you're more productive. Because I think now in the different workplaces and environment, there's a lot more challenges that you're facing. And so the point is to kind of give you support. I feel like this is not a pitch about Cocoon, so I'm going to move on quickly. But basically, we've built an AI coach, AI assistant manager. It's in Slack. The Teams extension is coming soon, and it's helping kind of you do things every day and manage you better. We are live in beta right now, meaning we have an MVP that we've been giving out. I know some of you have already signed up. I don't know if you're in the call, but that's it. That's me. If you're interested, just ping me, reach out. I can tell you a lot more. And I see. Okay, Pia, you're gonna come back. Clara May, you're in a role. You're leaving in next week, so it's gonna be finding on your role, looking for a role. Okay, so I feel like most of you are looking for a role, so that's very interesting. Okay, but no, not you, Naria. You are currently you're looking for a role. Okay, everybody's looking for a role. Amazing, wonderful. So here's what we're gonna talk about today. So we're going to talk about obviously what is resilience and why it matters. We're going to talk about 3 ways that you can build this daily. And like I always say, resilience is it's a muscle. So you have, like, it's not, you don't just exercise it once and you're done. Sadly, it's the same with the gym. You can go to the gym a lot, stop going, and you'll lose all of that. It's the same with resilience and mindset. So it's a lot of little things you can do daily, and how that can help. And then we'll talk about growth mindset. 'Cause there's a lot of really interesting stuff to talk about in this, and what that means, and how you can use that for you. And then kind of feedback, tough feedback. There's a bunch of stuff we'll talk about. Before we start, once again, up to you in the chat. What's the one word that comes to mind when you're thinking about your job search right now? I think all of you are looking for a role. Might not be failed. This is just how I think about resilience and tough challenges. But put in the chat maybe one word that comes up when you're thinking about your current job search. Trying. Okay, I like that. Tenacity. Okay, amazing. If I'm hoping that I'm not butchering your name. Consistency. I love this. Okay, amazing. That's great. I mean, look, I relate to all of this. Overwhelming. Yes, I relate to that as well. I was just chatting with my best friend who's going through a job search as well at the moment. And we're talking about this, and the amount of things, options, possibilities, the stress of actually is there possibilities. I'll talk about something I didn't mention, but let me put a note. I think that'll be interesting. Um, okay, so all of this is all normal. Everything you're feeling is very normal, and very relatable in the job search. But also, once you'll be in the workplace as well, you'll need tenacity, consistency. You'll need to try, and it will feel overwhelming. So let me move on from this intense gif. This is the definition of resilience. Want to start there just to explain kind of what this means. So resilience is the ability to bounce back from challenges, learn from setbacks, and adapt to change while maintaining a positive outlook and sense of well-being. So sounds great, right? You're bouncing back, you're learning, you're adapting, whilst also not losing your sanity and kind of being fine. Obviously, it's much easier said than done, and we're going to talk about this. But I highlighted in pink those the kind of different words, because it's resilience is not about never making mistakes, never failing, like being fine with everything, but it's very much about knowing that you will have those challenges. It will be difficult, but how do we bounce back? How do we learn from this? And obviously, how do we then not just learn once, but kind of build this into who we are as we keep going? So I'm going to talk about a bunch of different ways we can start building that resilience, and then I would love to have your views. So start thinking about ways, challenges, things you're facing, because I'm going to be asking you a few questions. But let me talk about some things. So The first thing about resilience, and as I've said, it's a muscle, it's all based on your attitudes, it's things you can do to protect yourself, to learn, bounce back, all of this. The first block, I always start with this, is self care. Now, self care, I'm not talking about just a face mask on a Sunday, although highly recommend. But the point is to make sure that you are treating yourself with care and respect, but also that you're being mindful of your energy and your emotions. And I know in the UK culture it's a bit like, ooh, my emotions, but it's a really really important place to start with, because you are the one that will feel everything, whether it's in the job search, the difficulty, needing, those feeling overwhelmed, sorry, or when you're in the workplace and things are not necessarily going your way. So usually the things that I talk about in the self-care part is, the first thing is time management, and that can mean a lot of different things. But if currently you're looking for a role, a lot of people will say, oh, job searching is a full-time job, which it can totally be, and you can make that in 8 hours a day if that's what you want. But I think it's knowing how you're going to manage your time and not letting it slip too much. And I can give you a very personal example, but obviously I'm an entrepreneur, and so I think about the business constantly, and this is where I need to be very clear on where I do my self-care. When I do try to stop, I manage the time that I actually spend on the business, because it can become all those things, right? I feel like I'm constantly trying, I feel it's overwhelming, I need that consistency. And so I have a few things that help me extract myself. So, for example, a key thing that works very well for me is I do yoga. It's the only time where I'm actually not in my head, which I found really, really great. But also, before I go to bed now, I read novels, not anything else, not nonfiction, so I can escape. So, there's a bunch of different things I'm putting in place to know when my mind will need a rest and at key moments in the day. So time management can mean this. It can mean, if you're in the workplace, knowing, if you were in your internship and you felt that there were difficult moments, it's also knowing, how, when you're going to work on certain things, when you're going to dedicate your energy. If you're doing the job search, you could say, I'm going to do it 3 hours a day, block it for 3 hours, or set myself one goal every day. But it's just being mindful of this, because there's a great quote my coach always used to tell me, which is, you can always do more, but have you done enough? So I think that's a key thing I'd love to remember with time management. Second thing, very much linked to this, is to take breaks. It can be very weird to say, well, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna stop now, I'm gonna end early, I'm gonna take that 2 day holiday, whatever it is. But it is very important to make sure that you are building that self-care and you're helping yourself by not always being on. And I mean this in the workplace, and I mean this in your job search, and I mean this just generally. When you're constantly, thinking about something, working on something, you will, you'll work on fumes and you'll exhaust yourself. And also you start to not think clearly. So in your job search, if you're, applying, and then you might have some interviews, it's important to also build in those breaks. So before an interview, a moment to kind of build that energy. Or if you find it really overwhelming to have to apply to hundreds of jobs daily, maybe I'm exaggerating, build a 30-minute, moment to breathe, or for you, a break before you go into a tough task. That's also a really good way to start doing tough, things. Is you add something nicer before, could be a little snack, or you do it at a moment that you'll have more energy. So these are all little tips to help you think through that. And then the last point is self-compassion. The best ever advice I was ever given when I was job searching and going through the endless list of no's was, every no gets you closer to your yes. And I didn't really get it at the time, because I was like, yeah, but I really wanted that job. But I think it's linked, and it's actually what I just wrote on the post I wanted to share with you. It's called the abundance mindset, which basically means we usually operate from a scarcity mindset, meaning we think that the things that are in front of us is the only thing we can access, is the only thing we have. And then when we don't have it, we're like, well, there we go. I'll never find a job. I'll never get that promotion because that one thing didn't work out. When you operate from an abundance mindset, you say, well, that one thing didn't work, but I'll get the next thing. Or there's a lot more opportunities. There's a lot more ways that I can succeed and feel better. And so that's, something to keep in mind. And that's one thing that I use a lot, because I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed, to apply for that job that felt like the dream job. Or, you see that, I don't know if this has happened to anyone, you can say in the chat, but you see this job, and you're like, this is me. The job description is me. And you apply, and then you don't get it, and like, well, there we go. If I don't get that job, then I go get nothing. But just know there's hundreds of thousands of open roles, at any given time. So it's just one, you will find the next one. But appreciate I'm throwing out a lot of concepts at you, but find the ones that stick, find the one that resonate with you. I know the abundance mindset has really helped me because I was doing a lot of sales, and whenever we get a no, I feel like that's it. We'll never work with that customer again, or that investor meeting, it didn't go well. They've said no, they'll never invest. It's a no for now. It could be a yes later, and if they say no, then it gets me closer to my yes later. So I hope that's resonating. Um, so tell me in the chat, whilst I go through the next things, is something resonating with you? Is there something else that you do to kind of take care of yourself that's helping you in your job search? Share with me your tips, because then we'll go through more. But I'd love to know what else I'm missing. The second part, which I think is a really, really important one, is to detach yourself. And the concept is we usually tend to react when something happens because it's emotions first instead of respond. So I usually use that example in workplaces when you're going through, a difficult performance review, or it's you're getting to feedback. Usually it's the knee-jerk reaction is yes, but, and you want to defend yourself, or you're like, well, I don't understand, and because you're reacting, and reacting is basically from a place of that emotion that like, I'm mad, and that really never gets you anywhere. So great way to build resilience, and basically that's in the learning side. So the practicing self-care is about the bouncing back, and then the detaching yourself is about learning. um and then that's response. So ask questions. If you're having an email and they're saying no, you didn't make this round, ask, can I ask why? I'd love to understand, instead of have your rage, but then ask questions, ask for feedback. Seek support. Go to people that are around you that can help. It could be managers or mentors from your past internships. It could be friends. But ask their feedback. If you've noticed, I don't know, somebody's told you you're not a great communicator in an interview, and like, I don't understand, does this make sense? Like, search, ask for feedback, ask questions. I recently did this. I emailed a big investor and they replied no, and I thought, oh, that's so annoying. And my reaction was I just wanted to react, and then I emailed asking, is there a reason why you didn't even want to see the pitch deck? And she replied right away and was explaining why, and I thought, oh well, that's really interesting. And meanwhile, whilst I waited for that answer, I went for support. I went to my co-founder, I went to friends, like, oh, this was a no. And they'll build you up. So that's a way to detach yourself from the situation. Remind yourself that it is not you. It's just a situation, it's just a moment in time, it's just a CV and a pile of others, it's just an interview, and in other steps. Okay, hoping all this makes sense. If I speak too fast, you let me know. And then the third point is that kind of adapting. So we talked about bouncing back, the self-care. We talked about the adapting, the learning, sorry, the detaching yourself, and then the adapting is starting to build that growth mindset. And so call this be optimistic. But essentially it's more start to think all of these things basically are learnings to help you become better, to help you bounce back. And sometimes you will have a no from an interview, or you will have something in a job search that's not going well. And you might not learn a lot of things, but you'll learn how you might not learn, sorry, like what went wrong with your CV or the interview or why it wasn't you, but you'll learn how you reacted. You'll learn how you've built the strength to kind of keep going and things like this. So that's, if I hope this makes sense, but you're basically still building that muscle within yourself, and you're always learning things even when it doesn't sound like it. And so if I go back to my investor email, the reason why they weren't investing was because they start their investment checks at a much higher check limit bandwidth than we were looking for. So I was like, oh well, that makes sense. Okay, I didn't learn much about this, but I learned about that. I asked for feedback. I learned that I wasn't scared to do it, and I learned that actually that was there will be some that won't be relevant for me. So that's those types of learnings. Learning from no, there's always, as we said, like there's always a reason to ask for feedback. I know now a lot of people just send automated emails, don't give you feedback, but you can keep pushing, especially if it was a job that you really liked or you've had a few interviews and it's not going through. You can always message people on LinkedIn and just say, hey, we've had this chat. I know you have loads of candidates, but I would love to understand, what I could have done better. There's a chance people will say yes. And if worse comes to worse, you just get ghosted, like it happens. So but keep pushing for what matters to you, and then focus on the progress. We'll talk about this in a second, but that's really usually the key thing, is to not keep looking like to where you want to be. So that's a key thing. We usually look at where we wish we were, so in a job, in that next round interview, and where we are now, we're like, oh, I'm falling behind, I'm not doing well. But if you look at where you are now and where you were a few weeks before, months before, you'll see the progress you've done. And we usually kind of underestimate that, but there is a lot of magic and greatness in that progress, even when it doesn't feel like it. Okay, I'm taking this opportunity to take a breath and a sip of water. I would love to know, maybe if you can share a bit more, if you feel comfortable, in the chat, about your experience in the job search. Is any of this resonating? Tell me, are you struggling to get interviews? Are you struggling with the lack of feedback? Like, what's one thing maybe that's coming, or a bunch of stuff that's coming up, so we can see how we could use some of these techniques on maybe real examples? Because I can keep talking about my investor emails, but appreciate that's probably not the most relevant. So if anyone wants to share. Okay, I see some of you are typing. By the way, none of this will be, one share this externally. I mean, one share this with others. Gaining feedback. Okay. Um, that's usually a tough one. It's, Glory, if you feel, would you be able to say more? Is it after interviews? Is it after just sending your CVs? Both? Because the way I would think about it is, CVs probably will be quite difficult to gain the feedback. You can keep asking. I think the default should always be, I'm going to keep asking, because you never know who might respond. But after interviews, because you've made usually a connection, that's where you can follow up either via email or LinkedIn. I would actually recommend both. And I would actually not, I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I would also really encourage you chasing. So, you can send an email saying, I appreciate it and get to the next round. Love that role. Felt, this, it went well. I would love to understand what could have been done better. And if they don't respond to you in 5 days, you can chase and say, I'm so sorry to, bother you, but I'm in the middle of another round of interview and I'd like to learn for the next ones. If you have 10 seconds or want to send me a voice note, but there's ways to be able to show what you want. I don't know if that's useful for you. Um, Rarely getting interviews, which is the frustrating part. There's so much of CV optimization one can do. Feels like nothing is working. Yeah, no, that I understand. The CV optimization, especially now, it feels a bit intense. I gonna give you feedback that, I mean, my views, and obviously I'm just taking from what you've sent. Um, but maybe on this front, so I'm giving you practical stuff and out building the resilience part. But just on this, what would be interesting, I know for me, I like to have the data, and so maybe there's a way for you to look at the number of roles you've applied. So I usually like to work back from a funnel, just to have a view instead of the kind of detaching myself. So I used to do that a lot. Look at the number of jobs you've applied to and the different ways, was it online? Was it through a program? Like, how was it done? And then see what was the number of people who replied, even if it was no, and then obviously yes and no's. So you can start seeing your conversion rates to positive, and then you can see from, the channel. So, when it was a cold application or a click instant apply on LinkedIn, I got a 1% response. But what it was through like a recommendation of a colleague, it was a 60% response. But that can start helping you see what works, because if you say rarely getting interviews, I assume you might have gotten a few or at least one. So see what was that one, see if there's anything you can note from that. I think that's a good way to detach yourself, instead of going, well, there's only so much I can do. It's all right, well, what can I learn? Like, what is the data that I have to start building this? That's a good way to see the levers and what you can play around with. Um, and when you say feels like nothing is working, I appreciate that. Um, and I think and we'll talk about this with the growth mindset in a second, but I I would list down and go, okay, well, if it feels like nothing is working, what's everything that I've done so far? Every single thing, and then what has worked, because some things might have worked, or you might have started to see some, glimpse of potential. And maybe you'll actually, when you do like all the things you've done, you might notice that you actually did only one or two things, and there's myriad of other ways to get roles. So I'm saying this because it's a good way for you to confront yourself with your thoughts. I think that's a key part as well in the job search or even in the office, but we get a lot in our heads. But when you expose and you go, oh, well, it feels like nothing's working. And then you go, well, what is nothing? What is all the things that I've done? And then you see and you're like, well, yeah, I've done a lot of instant apply on LinkedIn and that hasn't worked. Okay, fair enough. What else could I be doing? And there's ways for you to start asking you those questions. I don't know if how useful this is. You might be like, well, I've tried 10 different techniques. So take all of what I'm saying with a pinch of salt. Um, but yeah, okay, keep letting me know in the chat. I'll use this as a good segue for the growth mindset, because this is something that I think will resonate with you, Simozo. Hopefully, I'm saying your name correctly. Um, but on the it feels like nothing is working. So I saw this really wonderful growth mindset masterclass, and I'm now using this on everyone I know. So bear with me. But you start with the emotion. So you go, it feels like nothing is working, and then you ask yourself, or you can do this with someone else. Well, is this thought serving you? Because the when you ask this to people, when you say nothing is working, and you'll see I did the one thing that most people do is you want to jump in and help. You're like, but no, look, you've done so well, and look at this. But growth mindset is, if you keep telling somebody like, no, no, but you're doing well, you're doing great, like you're actually not helping them learn or adapt. They're feeling that emotion, and it's not really getting them anywhere. So the technique is, I feel like nothing's working. Okay, hear you. Is this thought serving you? Chances are you're going to say, well, no, not really. Actually, it doesn't really help me to think nothing is working in my job search. Okay, what is a thought that would serve you instead? Usually the opposite, right? So it feels like some things could work, or I know that things will work at some point, or I know that I can find a way to get a job. So try and find another thought that would help you, and it doesn't need to be just I'm going to find a job, but it could say there is at least one way that I can figure out how to find a job. And then and then you say, great, well, do you have a proof of that? Because that's then where you get to use that data, and what I was just kind of hinting towards. um because then it's not just people saying, no, no, but don't worry, or it'll be fine, but it's really based on you and saying, okay, well, that thought really wasn't helping me, but this is a thought that would actually serve me, and I actually have data, or I can prove that, or there's things that I can go and find that are true. And so when you say feels like nothing's working, that's not helping. Okay, a thought is, that at least there's one way to find, you will find at least one way to get a job, and say, well, do I have evidence of this? Probably in your case, maybe yes, you might have had one interview. Okay, well, where did that come from? How did that one go? And you start building on this, and then when you start to go into those negative thoughts, you start to anchor them, and it's much easier obviously said than done, but I've started doing this on my husband. It's starting to work, because you're helping people go through their own growth mindset, instead of just saying, giving advice or solutions. Shout in the chat if this makes no sense whatsoever, or if you have other scenarios you want to test the growth mindset masterclass with. Happy to try them with anyone else. But I really encourage you, if there's one thing you take out from this, maybe it's the abundance mindset, but try this on yourself, because it's been fairly positive for me. You just need to remind yourself. So put a little post-it notes on your laptop maybe. um so that's the first bucket, right, of growth mindset, is reframing your thoughts, and understanding how else you could be helping yourself. Put a little quote, it's Taylor Swift: I could build a castle from all the bricks they thread me. It's just to know, like, I don't know if this is a positive thought, a helpful one, but I think we have to accept that we will all face very difficult moments, and job search is one. But then when you'll be in your job, there'll be, difficult moments, promotions, getting on with colleagues. There's so many times that we'll be exposed to difficult things, that I always tell myself this is just a part of the journey, and you're building something there, even when it feels awful, and even when it's, not the nicest part. this is where, you start to really build and become who you are and build a castle, or it's ammunition for you as well. So reframe your thoughts. Then imposter syndrome. I wanted to do talk a little bit about this, because when Tiana and I were talking about building the session, we talked about the fact that actually, many people, and I think a lot of the cohort felt imposter syndrome. So you're not alone. I think it's the latest stat is 70, might be 80%, which I think it might be even the same across gender, might be a bit higher for women, and people, and in kind of minorities. But just for, so one, it's totally normal. um Imposter syndrome, if I'm sure you've heard the term now, but just as a recap, it's essentially feeling like a fraud. So feeling like, the success you've had is not really deserved. But the way it can translate into the job search is it could make you not want to apply. And maybe you've seen some companies are trying to curb that now, but you'll see a full list and then it will go, even if you don't have 100% of the skills, you should still apply. That's to counteract imposter syndrome, because many people feel that will see and be like, well, I don't really want to apply. Well, I don't have 100% of the required skills. It's fine. You'll be surprised by the amount of people who apply to jobs of only 50% of those skills. So maybe that's one where, like, I keep tinkering my CV. Maybe it's broadening your reach. So there might be things there. um and knowing that when you feel uncomfortable, it means that you're growing. It's very simple thing, but um my co-founder and I, now we have this thing where we try to do something that makes us uncomfortable every day, because we know that this means that we're actually growing, and we're making progress. So that is some of the kind of imposter syndrome, like, premise, and kind of things to know about. Ways to combat it is a bit the same as catching yourself, which I know is a bit easier said than done, but same, I put a lot of posted reminders around my screen to when I'm in that mindset. But if you're applying to a job and you feel yourself going, I don't know, it's probably not me, or if you're in an interview and they ask you, tell me about a time where you did something really well, or a great piece of feedback you had, and you start to go, well, I don't know, I just like, there's ways to catch these things. So write down, like, are you having the imposter, is it showing up, because there's ways for you to kind of notice that. So it's more something to notice, probably. um and then the last point is to trust yourself. So obviously I've said all of this, and I've given you ideas, feedback. You'll have feedback from interviews. um but the point I made on this is choose what you listen to. I think people will give you a lot of feedback. Maybe some will be different. It might actually be against each other. And so it can be really frustrating when you're like, well, I applied to 3 jobs and they all gave me very different feedback and I'm very frustrated. Is also trust yourself. Like, yourself. It's all, at the end of the day, it's just people's opinions. Someone once told me, um, a stat, like an actual stat or fact, comes from 1,000 different people. So that's how you build stats. You need to have at least 1,000 responses. So under this is just somebody's opinion. And I love that. It means if you're going to a job and somebody's giving you one piece of feedback or job interview, or it's just one person's opinion. Now, obviously, like, if you start noticing trends, like, don't just dismiss it all. But yourself, some of the things that you'll be great at. And if you're in the process of applying and you're like, I just don't know what else I could be doing, am I just not good enough? Like, trust your instincts, trust yourself as well a little bit, to not be broken by the job search process. The importance of context. So as I was saying, you might perform different based on different interviews or different people in front of you. You might have people who are in a bad mood. You might apply to a job that actually, like, they just closed, or they had actually somebody internally that moved in and you just didn't know. So there's a lot of context that you might not have. So also to remember that not everything you're experiencing is because of you, or things like this. And that's really key, and I think we tend to forget that a lot. So just for you to remember this. And just a note as well, I don't know if you get frustrated by this, but I just wanted to say, when you see on LinkedIn, 100 people have applied to this role, the way that LinkedIn calculates the stat is based on the number of people who clicked apply. It doesn't actually mean that they've submitted their job application. So I don't know who needed to hear this today, but if you see this, don't believe that is true. It doesn't mean that you have 450, 100 people that have applied. It just means people have clicked. And then the drop off rate is really big. So always like divide those numbers by 2 or so, because there's, if that helps build that confidence a bit. And then obviously write things down. So in the correct order is write things down, understand the context, and then choose what you listen to or not. And I can share again with my experience in fundraising at the moment, but I get a lot of feedback on the deck and the idea and all of this. And sometimes I'll have two people tell me very opposite opinions, both very like people I regard and I listen to. I have to decide what I listen to. So I always write everything down and then kind of help triage what I think is actually important, or not. What's resonating in this, in the growth mindset? Give me your raw feedback in the chat. Are you feeling that this is something that's gonna help you, or are you feeling like I have no idea how to do this when I'm applying for jobs? Like throw things at me, tell me. I will not take it personally. I will detach myself from the situation, but um I'm sharing things that I've spent the last couple of years building on myself and kind of trying. So appreciate it. Might feel like a lot. It might feel like totally unattainable. It might feel super useful, but um, tell me what you think, and then we can try. When I'm in a bad spot, I have a folder title for rainy days. Oh, it's my next slide. Yeah, which contains good feedback of reports for big projects that reaffirms that I'm doing a good job. Yeah, I love that. It's that trust yourself instinct and kind of remembering and using the facts, right? Of when you reframe your thoughts, you're like, do I have evidence? Going back into that evidence, like, do I have evidence that I can get a job? Yes, I got an internship. Do I have evidence that I can do a good job? Yes, I got a positive email. So I love this. Yes, amazing. I try to keep a record of positive commentary and feedback. That's great. That's really, really great. And also if achievements when you get to your next job, because you will all find a job, is making sure that write down everything that you're achieving. And it can be small, but that's just a great thing for your next job search. And you can start doing this now as well. Look at achievements you've had in maybe school or internships, because then you can leverage those in interviews and really extract the value from those. So that's a great way. Like, write down as many things as possible. We forget most of things that's in our brain, and so that's a really, really good thing to do. Okay, I think a few people are typing, so I'll let you do it. I'm trying to grow audacity to eliminate that imposter fraud feeling. Yes, I worked for it, so I shouldn't be getting that feeling. I deserve it. Yes, yes, I really, really love that. Actually, I'll show you this. This was not planned, but as we're getting vulnerable, this is a little post-it note I have. Can you see it? That's my, oh, you can't see it, but basically that's a post-it note I have above my desk, and I'll read it to you. And it says, and I read this every day to myself, I can do anything. I am smart and unique. I am building my dream life. I am devoted. I don't give up, and I connect with my why. And that's something, so you worked for it, you shouldn't be getting that, you deserve it. I love this. Like, I read this to myself every day because I forget it. I'm in the trenches, and you get tough things every day, but it's great to remember, that you do deserve it. You are working towards something, and you can truly make it happen. And sometimes it just takes time. And there's so many examples out there of, people that got rejected, people who didn't get what they wanted, um, but they kept getting back up. And that's kind of could build a castle from the bricks. You'll get there. It might not be the easiest route, but it'll be yours. Yeah, overcoming the imposter syndrome. I replied things. Yeah, just remembering that. I don't know. I feel like maybe when you apply to jobs, you could do a bucket of 70% I've met, exactly the criteria, and maybe like 30% I go a bit out of my way. I reach for the stars. It's maybe there's a few things I don't have on, but push yourself a little bit. Um, Rosemary, you said it's so hard to overcome the imposter syndrome. Do you feel maybe sharing in the chat a bit more? Like, how do you find it coming up? Like, what does that look like for you? If you feel comfortable, obviously it doesn't need to be super detailed, but I'm curious um about different ways maybe we can think about that together.
Alice, in terms of like people who are asking, do you want me to just r- allow their mic? Maybe if they can
Oh,
speak.
yes.
Yeah, that's okay. Sorry, Rosemary. I know you're typing, but let me just allow you.
Yeah, absolutely. If people, I mean, yes, if people feel are now allowed to unmute themselves. But yeah, Rosemary, I think you might be allowed to unmute yourself if you want to, but if you prefer to type, that's fine as well.
Yeah, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
In terms of the imposter syndrome, I don't know, it's maybe resonating like feeling like a fraud when applying, you know, not feeling like good enough, or like, I don't know, like the setback when you get a rejection, feeling like I don't belong, or if you get what
Mm,
I mean.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Two things, right? Like when you're applying, feeling like, oh my God, why would they choose me? And then when
Yeah.
you do get the rejection, it's self-reinforcing, like, well, of course they didn't pick me because I'm a fraud, and kind of not belonging. What are you so you're noticing it, which is great, because that means that at least you maybe can tell to some extent this is not the thoughts that are serving you, or it might not be true. um
Mhm.
is there anything you're doing right now to help with this, or something that you tell yourself, or you just kind of go, well, just how it is, I'm gonna keep applying?
I think I resonate with what you're saying before. Like every no is closer to a yes. Like it might be no from this job or this job, but eventually someone is going to say yes.
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
maybe that job wasn't meant for me. Maybe
Yeah,
there's a better suited role out there as well.
yeah. And I love that, and I think this is the things you'll need to. And look, we said it, right? It's a muscle. Like some days you'll feel it and it'll be there, and some days you want to exercise it, and it will feel like a lot of rejection. Um, I definitely feel this, every day I build that muscle, but some days I'm like, oh, there we go, another rejection, another no from a sales email, and it can be really disheartening. But I think remembering, as you've said, right? Somebody will say yes, and it will
Yeah.
happen, and people say yes to people who keep going. So some people have luck, some people have other things, but what you have is your tenacity and the consistency as well, which I know some of these were words in the job search process. So that's one way. And then if you do feel yourself, like if you're hearing yourself say like, oh, I feel like a fraud, then write down, like I actually mean write it down, write down a piece of paper why you're not a fraud, or why you could be qualified for this role. Because if you are applying, it means something in you is telling you could be doing a good job. And it might not mean that you have the qualifications, but what makes you, if right now I said, well, what makes you think you do a good job at this? Write it down. Like, I've done this. I know I trust myself. And maybe it's not evidence backed, but it's like a feeling that you have. And putting it on paper, I know might be a bit like, oh, I don't have the time for this. But that helps you, because then you're like, that's a mirror. Um, that's why I have post-its and things like this. That's why coaches use the mirroring technique. They reply what you say back, so you hear it. That's quite powerful when you see things written down as well. Or opposite, if you feel like you're a fraud, write it down. Write why you think you're a fraud and all the things, and then read this and say, what would I say if this was my best friend? Or like, do I actually believe all the things I wrote down? And are there ways that I can counter interact some of these things? Um, and I'll give you one last example of my life, and you can I've suffered from imposter syndrome. I used to think I was terrible at maths at school. I was first of my class. I got like almost straight A's at maths, but I used to think that it was just a coincidence, and I was gonna get found out, and I was actually not good at this, and it was just luck. And I was convinced of this, but convinced of this to the point where until my late 20s, I was very much convinced that this was just not an area I was good at. And there was a moment I thought, that's crazy. They still haven't found me out. Like I got straight A's in my exams, and I was top of my class. Maybe am I actually good at this? And I wrote, and I just started to use facts. I was like, well, I did do this, and I am able to calculate fast, and I do have a good sense of logic. And I just started to confront myself to these thoughts, and like it took me 10 years, but kind of got to a point where actually I believe I'm actually not that bad at it. So it's sometimes like listening to these thoughts and trying to like poke yourself a little bit, like detaching yourself. Amazing. Well, I'm loving
I
this. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to say I agree and thank you so much.
Oh no, for sure. If anybody else wants to unmute and have a chat, very happy to do so. I think I only have one slide left, so there is time if people want to, or if there's things that you want to share.
For me, I think the problem is, I know, as you said, getting no's and someone is going to say yes eventually. I think the wait period is like the most overwhelming part of it because you're just there applying. There's a couple of no's every time, and you're just wondering, are you ever gonna get out of this situation or things like that? So that makes it a whole lot overwhelming for me with this whole job search thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're saying, right, it's just will I ever get there? There's that long wait. You know it'll happen. It's just that it's like this long time, and that's where you have to exercise that muscle, right? It's not just it's a 2 week job search, and then it just for 2 weeks I'm gonna feel uneasy. It could be months, and it's gonna be long, and it's gonna be that long draining process where you'll need to exercise that muscle. And it's it's a tough it's a very tough webinar. I really want to help everyone to be like, oh, we can figure out solutions, but that's not the point of this. The point of today is really to say such a tough job market, and everything that you're feeling and going through is really crap and very difficult, and we can all brainstorm ideas to make it work, and that could be a next session. But what we're saying, you will feel this even if we have the best of plans. So how can we help you manage all of those no's and that waiting time and things like this? So it's it's tough, right? Because you also want to figure out the solution, but all of these are also really really crucial skills to build and to have within you, not only because they'll help you keep sane during that also, but also just generally when you move into the workforce or anytime you're facing something difficult. So I'm hoping there's something. It could be reframing your thoughts. It could be, what else did we talk about? Any of these things, maybe saying, you know what, I'm gonna every day have a act of self-compassion and gratefulness. Write something you're grateful for, something that went well, something you're proud of. I personally do this every day. I write one thing that I'm proud of that I did today. It's just a good way to keep the positive mindset. And I do a lot of support for salespeople and sales specifically. People get very focused on the outputs because they have goals. So they know, like in your case, the goal is to get a job, right? In the sales role, it's to sign X amount of deals. And so people focus on this when they're behind. But I always say you focus on what you can control. And you don't control the output. You don't control like who's going to say yes or no. All you can control is your input. So number of jobs you apply to, how you show up to interviews, how you follow up from an interview, how you manage your emotions, how you respond to feedback. And that's all you can do. And if you do everything right, it will happen. It will happen for sure. I believe in this, and we're all manifesting it will happen. But in the meantime, it's making sure that the input and it's you, right, that it's the best it could be. And that means every time you apply to a job, you rebuild that positive mindset that I will get that job, or I can get that job. This is one more opportunity to get a yes. So it's not always going to be this way, but it's trying to build some of these things, and maybe at the end we can all commit to doing one thing differently. Yes, Tiana.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to add, before I got my first role as an intern in 2022, because that's when I graduated, um, I felt very like behind. I hadn't, all of my friends were very like equipped, they had graduate roles, and I didn't start looking until I graduated because I was like, I've been doing other things and I thought I had time. You come to realize you don't have time. And I was applying like crazy because I'd also got a flat. So I was like, I need to pay rent. And so there's a lot of stress. But I think what was just encouraging, as Alice has echoed, I think what we've all echoed is every no. And I got so many no's. Like I was hunting for months. And obviously that doesn't compare to people that have been like looking for years. But I think one thing was I just didn't hold out hope, and I used so many different avenues where it wasn't just LinkedIn, it was befriending recruiters, it was applying directly to the organization, or figure out like so many ways. And I was very obviously lucky to get a job eventually, but I do understand that was just like 2 years post-COVID, and it's obviously gotten a lot harder. But I think it's about having that faith. That's the number one thing that will keep you going through it. And then obviously being smart about it. But I do agree. I did tweak my CV so many times and it felt like I'm not getting any interviews. But what I did use was the feedback from interviews when I would get them, very rarely, but when I did, and I'd be like, okay, you did this last time. And from the feedback from the recruiter or whatnot, don't do this in this interview. And that kind of helped me land my job, as well as applying for roles that you don't necessarily have experience for. In my current role, I didn't necessarily have experience in community engagement. I had it in marketing, but a lot of the work that I'd done at university was creative things such as like fashion styling and producing work, which ties in with this role, but not necessarily. And because I was very passionate about it and I had the transferable skills, that's the main thing. I was able, and I also had faith in myself. Don't get me wrong, I still suffer from imposter syndrome, but I had faith that and belief that I was actually very good at what I was doing, that I was able to leverage those transferable skills so that when the time came and I was applying for the role, Rebecca was like, yeah, even though you don't necessarily have the direct experience, you were really great for this role and your enthusiasm and whatnot. So yeah, to say, we've got you and we're here to support you. But I do understand where you're coming from, having only just graduated a couple of years ago too.
Yeah. No, I love this, and I love what you said. Just be smart with how you're job searching. I'm gonna put something in the chat if it can help people. I've recommended this to everyone who's job searching, and it's free. It's a Chrome extension. It's I used to know the person who created this, but it helps you see. I think last time I checked, it helps you see the like the job description and then your CV, and then underlines if you have the keywords and things like this. So it's helping you do CV optimization in a much quicker way. Uses AI and all of that. So if that can help some of you, then go for it. I haven't actually used it. This is my disclaimer. So, but it's free, so it might be worth a try. Um, no, I love this. And the next session we're doing, maybe we can incorporate some of that as well, but it's around personal branding and how that can help as well in the workplace, but especially in your job search. And so there's a lot of things there. And what you were talking about, Tiana, right? It's showing the transferable skills, but it's befriending recruiters, it's leveraging your network, it's knowing who you can go to. Like, I have a bunch of mentees and I'm always, thinking, they're the first people I want to hire. They're the first people that if they ask for help, I'll be there because we have a connection. And so there's lots of people that you can go to, and you might not even like recognize that actually you do have people around you. And it could literally be like 3 people, like one person you met one day as you were doing a walk, or one person your mentor from your internship, but there are people in your corner, and that could be the 10K Foundation, but there will be people who can help open doors, but they won't open them unless you tell them which door you want to open. And I've made that mistake where I go to people and go, hey, can you help? And people generally want to help, but if you don't tell them, I want an intro to that person, I'm applying to this role and I can't get through the recruiters, I see you know them, can you? And this practical asking for help will also get you can get you pretty far. So little teaser for the next session, but we'll talk about personal branding. I can sprinkle a little bit of networking in there as well if it's useful. But yeah, this way you stay and you come back for the next one. All right, conscious of time. So let me just go through my last slide, which I think we've covered. So this is the practical tips. So make sure that you reflect and you build a little bit of time for you every day, so it doesn't feel like you're constantly in the grind and in that application process. So I've mentioned this, write daily what you're proud of, or gratefulness, meditation, things like this. Those can be really, really powerful. I've put affirmations and visualizations here just because these are tools that have worked for me or worked for people around me. So I'd rather share, and then you decide if it's good for you or not. Affirmations is kind of the post that I was showing you. It's repeating things and telling them to yourself so they start to become beliefs. And so it could, for those of you who are saying you're struggling with imposter syndrome, you could literally just have a post-it note. It's good to have it in front of a mirror so you see yourself. Same, it's that mirroring. But repeating, I'm not a fraud. I'm not a fraud. And you repeat this 3 times every day, but just those little acts, they'll start building up. And in visualization, I'm not an expert, but I went to a really wonderful talk, so I learned a lot about that. The power of it is basically our minds are great, but they're a little bit dumb, and they struggle to know what's real and what's not. And so if you visualize something enough, if you trick your brain, you'll start thinking that it's true, and so you'll start acting and behaving, and your whole body, hormones, everything will start being different to some extent, right? It's not because you believe you're 6 foot tall you're going to become 6 foot tall, but it's things like before a job interview, visualizing yourself in the room, what you're going to say, how you act, that you're having a wonderful time, that you're super confident, visualizing yourself applying for roles and keeping that energy. But it's a way to build the internal muscle. So that brain muscle, those in a way that could take literally 5 minutes every day. You sit down, close your eyes, and visualize a process. I will put the link actually of who that person is, because I think she does a lot of talks and she guides people through things. It's not a guru or a sec, but she's really interesting, good person to follow on LinkedIn. She just released a book. But I thought she was really interesting about the science behind the visualization and how that can help you. I've started to incorporate it a little bit. I'm still a baby in that, but if that can help any of you, she talks about the different types and stuff like this. So might be able to find a blog. Talked about this as well, but make sure that you track your achievements. And this can be, that you applied to 10 jobs. It can be the things that you've done in the past, but make sure it is somewhere written. Don't just rely on your brain, because in moments of stress or in any moment you will forget. I like to either do it in a what, when, who, or a star format, so situation, task, action, result, just so it's a little bit structured. It's not just, especially if you're for interviews, so if you're talking about achievements or things you've done, that's a great way to be able to explain it to someone, not just I did this, but okay, and so what happened, what were the results. We've talked about the nice email folder, but and that can be a folder generally, but having a place where you keep the positive things that have happened. So that's all, folks. That's everything I had for today. As I've said, we have a questions slide. I mean, we have 2 minutes, but so shout right now if you need anything. But just before you do, this is my email. I put this on purpose if I can help. So once again, I'll open doors if you tell me which one to open. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn as well. But if you're able, put a note, because I get a lot of people adding me on LinkedIn and I don't always remember who's who. So if you just say you heard me talk, then that'll be great. And this is the teaser for the next one. We're building sustainable career path and preparing for senior roles. So we'll talk about personal branding and a bunch of different things in there. And that's next Tuesday.
Thank you
That's
so
me.
much, Alice. I can see everyone else commented. Thank you. I'll take these as no one else has any other questions. But I can see Ife and Rosemary are typing.
Oh, amazing.
Thanks.
Sorry, went through very quickly at the end, but if you have questions or anything, I'm here for the next minute. So feel free to ask or unmute yourself, and if not, I'm on email or LinkedIn, and hopefully we'll see you at the next session as well. Oh, Clara may go for it.
Hi, thank you, Alice, for this this presentation. I just wanted to quickly ask if you minded reiterating what Kokoon, your business, is about.
Yes.
I'm also considering the entrepreneurship route, so it's really interesting to hear your perspective and your journey. Sorry, so it's in 1 minute, but
No, don't worry. I'm done. I've been asked to do way shorter pitches than in 1 minute. I've put the link to the website so you can have a look. We're basically, so we're currently going to companies and we're saying that we can help managers manage early careers better. So we are more going towards businesses than early careers themselves. But that being said, we are giving access if you're using Slack, because with the Teams extension. So we've built basically an AI coach that helps you be more productive and manages you every day. It's integrated into Slack at the moment. So that's where we had the most need, but we're doing the Teams extension soon. So if you are using Teams, you can sign up to the waitlist on the website. We'll give it for free for the first couple of weeks so you can trial it out. But then if your managers want this, we can also go to them. So I know a few of you have, or a few of the 10K alum have signed up, which is really exciting. So that's what I'm doing. If you want to talk about entrepreneurship, anything like this, please ping me, because I'll probably have a lot to share.
Okay, I would really appreciate that, and I definitely will. Thank you.
Amazing. Awesome. And I stayed within, oh, it's just 501. Like I did really well.
You did.
Well
No,
done.
thank you so much for your time,
Thanks
and
for having me.
see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.